Good morning. Is there anyone here today who was 108 years old or older? I think not. But we are collectively, as a congregation, as a unique expression of the body of Christ, as First Congregational United Church of Christ, exactly that old, 108. It was that many years ago when a group of like-minded, justice-focused, eager to be community Ashevilleans gathered together, determined that this city needed a progressive Christian witness, and they became the First Congregational Church of Asheville. The official start of this church was on June 7th, 1914. With 31 charter members, we were on our way. What an exciting time it must have been. A number of us were here on June the 7th, 2014, when we celebrated our 100th anniversary, and we remember the wonder of that weekend and that Centennial Sunday. We were still on our way. Praises. Glory. Thanks be to God. Back up with me to 1914 for a minute. As we've already noted, on June the 7th of that year, First Congregational Church of Asheville marked its birth. In September of that year, the church trustees purchased some land on which to build a sanctuary. It was a lot at the corner of Merriman and Spears Avenues, not far from our church now. And some church members didn't like it, did not like that lot, did not want that land. 5 church members withdrew their membership, including the first moderator and the clerk. It seems that speaking one's mind was in our congregation's DNA from the beginning. And so it has gone. And, indeed, so it goes. It is this, my friends, that is part of what has made and makes us, us. It's something I love about who we are. One of my professors in seminary suggested something that still sticks with me these 30-plus years later. If you never have a disagreement about something in church, the church is not doing very much. Dear people of FCUCC, we have done a lot. Sometimes boldly, sometimes with timidity, sometimes with grace, and sometimes with differences of opinion and conflict and misunderstanding. But we have always tried to be faithful, another function of our DNA. And still, we are on our way. Next month, I will have been a member of this congregation for 29 years. When I arrived in 1993, our church home was still the building on the corner of Merriman and Spears. We were a small congregation then, composed of mostly older folks, kind of like my current age and up. Many of these members had been part of the church for years. They had raised their families here, and in their later years, from time to time, now enjoyed bringing their out-of-town grandchildren to church with them. Members worshiped together on Sunday mornings and occasionally shared a meal together after worship. But there was little activity otherwise. I came to this church because I was looking for a United Church of Christ, and at the time, this church was the only act in town. I remember getting out of my car as I parked across the street from the church on that August morning in 1993, and I noticed how small the church looked. I wondered if I could sneak in without being seen. An up until then lifelong United Methodist, I had come to believe that seeking another denomination was now the right thing to do. So, confident enough, but shaking a little, I entered the front door of the church and stepped into a narthex about half the size of our current narthex. So small, there was no sneaking in. A beautiful older woman with sparkling eyes and a contagious smile stood before me and said, "Welcome to our church." It was Helen Cricken, a woman who was to become a significant presence in my life. She, at the time, was the self-proclaimed church greeter. She didn't give hugs like Beaver, but I remember feeling embraced by her smile. Truthfully, I wasn't particularly overwhelmed by the worship service itself that day. But as I looked around that small sanctuary, I thought I caught a glimpse of something important. I thought I caught a glimpse of what might become home. And it has been ever since. After I was ordained at this church in January of 1995, I had the privilege of serving as the interim pastor of the church for 14 months in that year and into early 1996. During that time, the average age of church members was somewhere around 75, and for the most part, these retired but devoted folks seemed satisfied, but mostly unconsciously, I think, with the slow and comfortable pace of our church life. But as they began to recognize the trajectory the church was on, unless changes were made, members became aware that we had two choices. We could prepare for a good death or begin to do things differently. Since we're here today, it's clear that those deeply faithful and loving people chose to open themselves to change, to being church as the 21st century approached, and to continuing to be the progressive Christian witness that our ancestors dreamed of becoming. I thank God for these dear souls, most of whom have died in the past 3 decades. Without them and their bold decision to nurture this church back to life, you and I wouldn't be here today. But here we are, and we're standing on the backs of so many. And because of them, and because of our continuing faithfulness now, we are still on our way. After all, it's in our DNA. Praises, glory, thanks be to God.